Is that all? Part 1, the ultimatum. The massive alien ship appeared on a Tuesday because apparently even hostile extraterrestrial civilizations understand that nobody wants to deal with an invasion on a Monday. It materialized above New York City in a way that made physicists cry and traffic cops shrug. Just another thing blocking the intersection. Lieutenant Dave Cooper was enjoying his third cup of coffee and preparing for another thrilling day of filing reports at the UN Security Council's Extraterrestrial Response Division, a job that had been a complete joke until approximately 8 minutes ago. Now, as he watched the holographic projection of an alien that called itself Supreme Delegate Crix materialize in the middle of the UN General Assembly, he realized his job description had changed from professional paper pusher to humanity's first line of defense. "People of Earth," Crix announced, its 3 mouthparts moving in unsettling synchronization. "We are the Galactic Concordat, and we have come to offer you a simple choice: surrender or face annihilation." Cooper took another sip of coffee. "That's it?" The alien's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "I beg your pardon? I mean, is that all? Just surrender or die? No preamble, no list of charges, no dramatic speech about our primitive ways or our potential or whatever? What?" Crix's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "This is a standard Class C ultimatum. It's meant to be concise." "Yeah, but it feels a bit rushed, you know." Cooper set down his coffee and stood up. "Like you travel who knows how many light years to get here, and that's your opening line? Seems like a missed opportunity." The alien's skin shifted from blue to a slightly annoyed purple. "The ultimatum does not require your critique, human. It requires your answer." "Oh, I get that, but while we're on the subject, what exactly are we surrendering to? Like, what's the benefits package here? Do we get dental? Because I've got this wisdom tooth that's been giving me trouble." Professor Meera Patel, who had been frantically taking notes on her tablet, looked up with a gleam in her eye that Cooper recognized from their shared college days. It was the same look she got right before suggesting they calculate the aerodynamics of launching a couch from the physics building roof. "Actually," she chimed in, "I have several questions about the structural integrity of your ship. The quantum fluctuations alone should be causing—" "Silence!" Crix's hologram flickered with what might have been frustration. "This is not a negotiation or a scientific discourse. This is an ultimatum. You have 24 Earth hours to submit your unconditional surrender, or we will demonstrate our power." Cooper raised his hand like an eager student. "Quick follow-up question. When you say demonstrate our power, are we talking about a PowerPoint presentation or—" The hologram vanished mid-sputter, leaving behind a deafening silence and the faint smell of ozone. "Well," Cooper said, turning to the assembled representatives of Earth's nations, "I think that went pretty well." Meera adjusted her glasses. "You do realize you just sassed an alien civilization capable of destroying our planet?" "Yeah," he grinned. "And did you see how easily they got flustered?" "I think I just found our weapon." "Our weapon? Meera, what's the one thing humans are better at than any other species we know of?" She thought for a moment. "Based on our sample size of exactly 1 alien encounter, being annoying?" "Exactly." Cooper's grin widened. "And we haven't even started trying yet. The emergency meeting of Earth's military leadership was going about as well as you'd expect when you gather 30 generals in one room and tell them the fate of humanity might depend on being deliberately irritating." "Lieutenant Cooper, let me see if I understand this correctly." General Martinez pinched the bridge of his nose. "Your proposed strategy for dealing with an advanced alien civilization is to annoy them into leaving." "With all due respect, General," Cooper said, which everyone knew meant he was about to show no respect whatsoever. "I've spent 3 years working in government bureaucracy. I know exactly how much irritation it takes to make someone give up and go home." Professor Patel cleared her throat. "If I may, I've run some preliminary calculations on what I'm calling the frustration threshold theory." She pulled up a holographic display that looked suspiciously like she'd drawn it in MS Paint. "Based on Supreme Delegate Crix's reactions to Lieutenant Cooper's initial questioning, I believe their species has a significantly lower tolerance for what we might call bureaucratic nonsense than humans do." "That's impossible," someone muttered. Nobody has a lower tolerance than General Martinez. I heard that, Martinez growled. Case in point, Cooper gestured at the general. Look, we've spent centuries perfecting the art of being absolutely insufferable when we want to be. We've got customer service holds, DMV queues, automated phone systems. We're sitting on a goldmine of psychological warfare here. A Chinese general leaned forward. And you believe this will work better than our nuclear arsenal? Our nukes might destroy their ships, but our ability to ask for a manager will destroy their will to live. Mira clicked to the next slide, which was just a picture of a cat with the word science written across it in Comic Sans. My calculations suggest that if we coordinate our efforts, we can push their entire command structure to the brink of nervous breakdown within 48 hours. How would we even implement such a strategy? Martinez asked, already looking like he regretted the question. Cooper's grin should have been classified as a weapon of mass destruction. Simple. We treat this like what it is, a customer service complaint about their invasion threat. First, we demand to speak to Crix's supervisor. They're the supreme delegate, someone pointed out. Yeah, but are they really supreme if they can't handle a few simple questions? I bet there's paperwork they haven't filed. Did anyone see an invasion permit? Environmental impact assessment? Proof of insurance? Mira pulled up another slide, this one showing a complex flowchart that seemed to incorporate both quantum mechanics and internet memes. I've identified 7,423 potential questions we could ask about their organizational structure alone, and that's before we start requesting forms in triplicate. Forms? Martinez's eye twitched. Oh yes, Cooper nodded sagely. All the forms. We'll need them properly notarized, of course, and translated into every Earth language, including extinct ones. Can't be too careful with interplanetary legal documentation, right? A slow smile spread across Martinez's face, the first time anyone had seen him smile in 15 years of military service. You know, when I woke up this morning, I didn't think I'd be considering weaponizing bureaucracy against an alien invasion, but I have to admit there's something beautifully poetic about it. And the best part? Cooper leaned back in his chair. If they actually do provide all the documentation we ask for, we can just claim it was filed with the wrong department. Mira's next slide showed a graph with an exponential curve labeled Alien Sanity versus Human Persistence. Ladies and gentlemen, Cooper addressed the room, I propose we launch Operation Endless Echo, a coordinated campaign of completely reasonable requests that will drive our would-be conquerors to the brink of madness. Who's with me? The room was silent for a moment before Martinez spoke up. God help me, but I'm actually convinced this might work. Professor Patel, how quickly can you formalize these calculations into an official report, with appropriate cover sheets, naturally? Oh, I'll need to submit a request for additional research funding first, she replied with a straight face. Probably take a few weeks to process, unless you'd like to speak to my supervisor about expediting it. Martinez's eye twitched again. You're already starting, aren't you? Starting? Cooper smiled innocently. General, we haven't even filled out the preliminary paperwork for beginning to start yet. But don't worry, I have all the necessary forms right here, in quintuplicate. The room full of hardened military leaders watched in horror as Cooper pulled out a stack of papers thick enough to qualify as body armor. Somewhere in the distance, a printer began to hum ominously. Humanity's most passive-aggressive counteroffensive was about to begin. Hour 1 of Operation Endless Echo began with Lieutenant Cooper sending a formal request for invasion postponement due to scheduling conflicts. I don't understand. Supreme Delegate Crix's hologram flickered with barely contained frustration. What scheduling conflicts could possibly take precedence over planetary conquest? Well, Cooper consulted his notebook. Tuesday's no good because of Earth's weekly planetary backup. Wednesday we've got a global mandatory staff meeting about proper coffee mug labeling in break rooms. Thursday is already booked for an existential crisis. You can't just... That's not... Crix's multiple eye stalks twitched in different directions. This is an invasion. You don't get to reschedule an invasion. Professor Patel popped up from behind Cooper. Actually, According to subsection 7B of the Galactic Concordate's own military engagement protocols, which we found through a Freedom of Information request to your Public Relations Department, all military actions must be scheduled at least 3 business cycles in advance. We don't have a Public Relations Depart. Crick stopped. Wait, when did you submit this request? Oh, about 20 minutes ago. We're still waiting on a response, by the way. Your customer service wait times are frankly unacceptable. The next 12 hours consisted of Earth's finest bureaucrats, academics, and professional complainers, taking turns presenting increasingly bizarre but technically valid concerns about the invasion proceedings. NASA insisted on a full environmental impact study of alien weapon emissions. The IRS demanded tax documentation for all invading forces. The EU required consent forms for data collection from any humans vaporized during the conquest. Furthermore, a particularly enthusiastic Finnish representative was saying, under Eurovision Song Contest regulations, any entity claiming dominion over European nations must submit a musical entry at least 6 months prior to attempted subjugation. Cricks, whose skin had cycled through colors previously unknown to human eyes, looked ready to implode. These requirements are absurd. We are not participating in your singing competition. So you're refusing to comply with established regulatory frameworks? Cooper shook his head disapprovingly. I'll have to file a formal complaint. Of course, you'll need to first register to receive the complaint registration forms. No more forms! One of Cricks's eye stalks had developed a concerning twitch. We are a mighty civilization. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Did you file the proper paperwork for those conquests? Mira asked innocently. Because I've been reviewing galactic law, and I'm not seeing any conquest permits on file. You did keep copies, right? The alien delegate's response was a sound that transcended language barriers, the universal cry of someone discovering they might need to provide documentation from several centuries ago. Hour 18 brought humanity's secret weapon, a consortium of elderly librarians who insisted on cataloguing and cross-referencing every single piece of alien technology according to the Dewey Decimal System. Now, said Mrs. Henderson, her glasses gleaming menacingly, about your spacecraft's operating manual, we'll need that in large print with proper bibliography and index, and please use Chicago-style citations. What is Chicago style? Cricks whispered, terror evident in all 6 eyes. Oh dear, Mrs. Henderson tutted. We better start with the basics. Now, when citing an interplanetary conquest threat in a scholarly journal, by hour 22, Earth had submitted 94,563 separate requests for clarification, including one from a 6-year-old asking if alien spaceships had to follow school-zone speed limits, and if so, did they need to show their work when calculating the relativistic adjustments? Your species, Cricks declared, several of their appendages now stress-eating what appeared to be alien stress snacks, is impossible. Simply impossible. I'll need that in writing, Cooper replied, in triplicate, notarized by a space lawyer. What's a space lawyer? Excellent question. Let me refer you to our legal department's questionnaire about the definition of extraterrestrial jurisprudence. It's only 78 pages long, front and back. Professor Patel's frustration threshold graph was showing readings that threatened to break mathematics itself. She had to start a new whiteboard just to track the various shades of apoplectic rage being displayed by the alien delegation. And they hadn't even started on the warranty claims yet. By hour 23 of humanity's psychological counteroffensive, Supreme Delegate Cricks had developed a facial tic that made their entire head oscillate between dimensions. Their once pristine diplomatic robes were rumpled, stress snack crumbs scattered across the shoulders, and 3 of their 6 eyes had started to develop independent political opinions. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Cricks said, voice reaching a pitch previously achievable only by helium atoms under extreme duress. You're saying our doomsday weapon delivery system doesn't comply with your Americans with Disabilities Act? Well, Cooper consulted a thick binder labeled Ways to Say No Without Technically Saying No, Volume 1 of 47. While we appreciate your initiative in attempting to destroy our civilization, we have concerns about the accessibility of your apocalyptic death beams. Have you considered adding wheelchair ramps to your orbital bombardment platforms? They're death beams. They're not supposed to be accessible. They're supposed to be deadly. So you're admitting to discriminatory annihilation practices? Professor Patel looked up from her tablet, where she'd been calculating the statistical probability of an alien hive mind developing a migraine. That's going to require a formal review by our Equal Opportunity Destruction Committee. They're booked solid for the next 18 months, but I can get you on the wait list. The holographic projection of Crix flickered violently as they paced back and forth, all three of their mouths muttering in different alien languages. Behind them, the bridge of their command ship looked like a scene from a workplace comedy about nervous breakdowns in space. One alien officer was curled up in a corner, rocking back and forth while clutching a stack of human tax forms. Another was trying to explain to Earth's IT department why they couldn't remember their password for the invasion portal, which humanity had created just to make them need a password. Supreme Delegate, a frazzled subordinate approached Crix. The Humans Health and Safety Executive is demanding we provide documentation of our weapon system's carbon footprint. Carbon footprint? Crix's voice cracked. We use antimatter. Yes, well, the subordinate consulted their notes. They're saying we need to file an environmental impact study for that too, in Welsh. What's Welsh? We don't know, Supreme Delegate, but apparently we need to provide certified translations in it anyway. Cooper raised his hand. Don't forget the Klingon translation, for accessibility purposes. Klingon isn't even real, Crix screamed, their composed diplomatic demeanor finally shattering like a coffee mug in a government office with unclear labeling policies. I'm sorry, Mira adjusted her glasses, but can you prove that? We'll need peer-reviewed studies confirming the non-existence of Klingon, preferably published in at least 3 theoretical linguistics journals. The sound Crix made could best be described as a dial-up modem attempting to process existential dread. Oh, and before I forget, Cooper added cheerfully, about those antimatter weapons, do you have a permit for storing antimatter in a residential galaxy? Because we checked with the Cosmic Homeowners Association. We didn't know there was a Cosmic Homeowners Association. Well, there wasn't until about 6 hours ago. We formed one specifically to handle your case. The first meeting is next Thursday. We'll need you to prepare a presentation about your invasion color scheme and how it complements the existing aesthetic of the Orion Arm. Crix turned to their command crew, who were all in various stages of bureaucracy-induced breakdown. One of them had started trying to file themselves as a dependent on Earth's tax forms. How? Crix whispered. How do you tolerate living like this? Oh, this is nothing, Cooper waved dismissively. Wait until you see what happens when you file something in the wrong color ink. Speaking of which, all these forms you've submitted so far, they needed to be in mauve, specifically mauve, not purple, not violet, mauve. What's the difference? One of the alien officers sobbed. Professor Patel pulled out a color wheel and a spectroscope. Well, if you'll examine the wavelength variations... The entire alien command crew flinched simultaneously, like a group of customer service representatives hearing, "I'd like to speak to your manager," in perfect unison. As the 24-hour ultimatum drew to its close, Supreme Delegate Crix's hologram had degraded into what could only be described as contemporary interpretive art, a glitching, multidimensional representation of pure bureaucratic despair. Please, they whispered, all 3 mouths moving in different time zones. No more forms, no more requests, no more questions. Actually, Cooper said, pulling out a fresh stack of papers with the casual menace of someone who had spent their entire career preparing for this moment, we've just received some concerns from our Department of Redundant Departments department. A high-pitched keening sound emerged from somewhere within Crix's thorax. Your what? Oh yes, they're very concerned about the redundancy levels in your threat assessment protocols. They've prepared a 17-page questionnaire about your questionnaire submission procedures. In sextuplicate. Professor Patel's monitoring equipment was registering levels of alien frustration. that threatened to create a new branch of physics. Fascinating, she muttered, scribbling equations. Their capacity for bureaucratic tolerance appears to be inversely proportional to their technological advancement. One of Crick's subordinates stumbled into view, clutching what appeared to be a human employee handbook. Supreme Delegate, the humans are demanding we implement mandatory team-building exercises before proceeding with planetary conquest. They're suggesting trust falls. Trust falls? The words emerged from Crick's central mouth like a dying star's last gasp. Yes, Cooper nodded solemnly. Can't have proper invasion synergy without trust falls. Though we'll need you to fill out liability waivers first, and provide proof of insurance, and complete our standard Getting to Know You questionnaire. It's only 1,200 pages long. But, Crick's eye stalks were now moving independently enough to qualify for separate zip codes. We're here to conquer you. About that, Mira interjected, pushing her glasses up with scientific precision. We've been reviewing your conquest methodology, and I'm afraid it doesn't meet our minimum standards for apocalyptic threats. Your entire approach lacks proper documentation, fails to account for at least 73 different regulatory requirements, and frankly, the font you used in your ultimatum was completely inappropriate for interstellar diplomatic communications. What's wrong with the font? Well, Cooper consulted another binder, this one labeled Typography Regulations for Intergalactic Intimidation, a brief guide in 47 volumes. According to Section 89, subsection Q, paragraph 3.14159, all threats of planetary destruction must be presented in either Times New Roman or Comic Sans, depending on the severity of the extinction-level event being proposed. A visible shudder ran through the entire alien command crew at the mention of Comic Sans. But that's not all, Cooper continued, his grin achieving weapons-grade levels of smugness. We've also noted several spelling errors in your species designation forms. You'll need to resubmit everything, but first, could you clarify something for our records? Crick's hologram flickered like a strobe light at a bureaucrat's rave. What? Is that all? The words hung in the air like a customer service hold message. Is that all? Crick's repeated, their voice reaching a pitch that made dogs across 3 continents start howling. Oh yes, Cooper said cheerfully. We just need you to confirm that you've reviewed all our feedback, complaints, suggestions, regulatory requirements, procedural amendments, font corrections, spelling adjustments, color coding updates, and every single one of our previous 742,000 questions. And then tell us, is that all you need to properly comply with our invasion preparation protocols? Something inside Supreme Delegate Crick's, something that had evolved over millions of years to handle the stress of commanding an interstellar empire, finally snapped. The scream that emerged from their 3 mouths simultaneously would later be described by witnesses as the sound of 1,000 DMV employees trying to explain why you filled out the wrong form, but in space. It rattled windows, disrupted satellite signals, and somehow caused every printer in a 5-mile radius to jam simultaneously. Enough! Crick shrieked, their holograms strobing through colors that human eyes weren't equipped to process. We surrender, not you, us. We surrender to your bureaucracy. Just stop asking questions. Please, I'll do anything. I'll even fill out a feedback form about our surrender. Just make it stop. Cooper looked up from his stack of papers, the very picture of innocent confusion. Oh, you want to surrender? Well, why didn't you say so? Let me just get you the proper forms. The sound of Crick's final breakdown would later be classified as a new form of psychological warfare. The day Earth defeated an alien invasion through weaponized bureaucracy ended much like it began, with Lieutenant Dave Cooper drinking coffee and filing paperwork. The only difference was that now he was helping a broken alien civilization file their retreat authorization forms in triplicate. And don't forget to initial here, here, and here. Cooper pointed at various spots on the document. Oh, and we'll need a signature from your species' founding ancestors too. But they've been dead for 12,000 years? one of Crick's subordinates wailed. Well, that sounds like a you problem. I don't make the rules. Cooper paused. Actually, I did make that particular rule about 4 hours ago, but that's not important right now. Professor Patel was still taking notes, her tablet now smoking slightly from the sheer volume of data about alien psychological stress responses. Fascinating. It seems their entire species evolved complex technology specifically to avoid dealing with paperwork. They never developed any resistance to administrative procedures. The remnants of the Galactic Concordate's invasion fleet hung in Earth's orbit, like a group of corporate executives who had just survived their first encounter with technical support phone trees. Several ships had developed what appeared to be stress-induced rust spots. Supreme Delegate Crick's hologram had stabilized somewhat, though they now spoke with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who had seen too many feedback forms. We believed ourselves to be the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. We had mastered faster-than-light travel, conquered gravity, harnessed the power of stars themselves, but this level of bureaucratic warfare, it's inhuman. Thank you, Cooper beamed. We try our best. In 12,000 years of interstellar conquest, we have never encountered a species so persistent, Mira suggested. Annoying, Crick finished. The sheer stamina required to maintain this level of irritating behavior is beyond our comprehension. How do you do it? Cooper shrugged. Practice. Lots and lots of practice. Did you know some of us will spend hours on hold just to argue about a $2 charge on our phone bills? The entire alien command crew shuddered in unified horror. We will update our star charts, Crick declared, their voice carrying the weight of traumatic bureaucratic experience. Earth will be marked as a Class X civilization, terminally diplomatic with extreme persistence capabilities. No further contact is recommended without extensive psychological preparation and a team of legal experts. Speaking of legal experts, Cooper pulled out one last form. About your parking situation while in Earth orbit. The alien fleet broke orbit with such speed that several physics laws filed complaints about violations of their terms of service. Later, in what used to be the UN's Extraterrestrial Response Division, now renamed to the Department of Interstellar Bureaucratic Defense, Cooper and Mira sat reviewing their victory. You know what the best part is, Cooper said, feet up on his desk. We never even got to show them our real bureaucracy. Everything we did today was just amateur hour stuff. Mira looked up from her calculations. Amateur hour. Oh yeah, I mean we never even got to introduce them to our health insurance system. They both paused, considering the implications of subjecting an alien civilization to Earth's medical billing procedures. That might qualify as a war crime, Mira mused. Probably, Cooper grinned. But just imagine their faces if we had shown them how to file taxes with multiple planetary residences. Somewhere in deep space, Supreme Delegate Crick felt a sudden, inexplicable chill. By the way, Cooper added, pulling out his phone, I just got an email from the Galactic Concordate's automated customer service system. Apparently, they can't process their retreat documentation because they use blue ink instead of black on Form XJ27B. What did you do? Oh, I just replied with a link to our online submission portal. It's down for maintenance for the next 6 to 8 weeks. You're evil, Mira said admiringly. I prefer the term administratively gifted. Cooper took a sip of his coffee. Now, should we start drafting our proposal for standardizing interdimensional paperwork requirements? I hear the great old ones are getting restless again, and I bet they haven't updated their cosmic horror permits in eons. The universe, vast and infinite as it was, suddenly seemed a little more terrifying, not because of any eldritch abominations or alien invaders, but because somewhere on a small blue planet, humanity was getting really good at weaponizing their most annoying traits. And they were just getting started.